My new female supervisor instructed me to get coffee for the team. I happened to be the senior engineer. I just said, sure. Cascade Industrial Manufacturing wasn't just a workplace, it was my second home, a place where precision meant everything, and I'd poured 17 years of my life into keeping it running. The air in our facility, about 40 miles outside Cleveland, always hummed with the focused energy of engineers crafting aerospace components where mistakes were measured in thousandths of an inch. I'm 39 now, and I started here right out of community college, grinding my way up to senior mechanical engineer, pulling all-nighters, fixing problems no one else could touch. I was the guy they called at 3 a.m., the one who knew every machine's hidden quirks, the one who trained half the current staff and, last year alone, saved the company $2.3 million. That's not bragging, that number was literally framed in the lobby, a testament to excellence. My old boss, Arthur, was a legend. He'd run the engineering department for 22 years, understood that engineers weren't interchangeable parts. When he retired, he'd pulled me aside, told me he'd recommended me for his position. Said I'd earned it. I felt like it was finally my shot. I was already doing half the job anyway, handling the technical heavy lifting while Arthur dealt with corporate politics. Instead, they brought in an outsider, Jessica Maxwell. 43 years old, an MBA from some prestigious school, and zero, absolutely zero, manufacturing experience. Her background was management consulting and strategic operations, qualifications that apparently made her fit to lead a department of people who actually made things. The corporate email announcing her arrival used all the usual buzzwords: fresh perspectives, innovative leadership. Arthur forwarded it to me privately with a simple, poignant message: sorry, kiddo. Politics won. I got it. Corporate loved external hires for management, fresh eyes, no baggage. But it felt like hiring a dentist to run a car dealership because they both work with drills. Jessica started the following Monday. Her first act was an all-hands meeting, which she showed up to 15 minutes late, wearing heels that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. She stood at the front, a practiced smile plastered on her face that never quite reached her eyes, and droned on for 45 minutes about synergy, cross-functional optimization, and leveraging core competencies. She used the word streamline 11 times. I counted. Not once did she mention tolerances, quality control, or any of the actual challenges we faced. Not once did she ask about current projects or what we needed from leadership. When she finally finished, she asked for questions. Ethan Taylor, one of our sharp junior engineers, raised his hand and asked about recurring calibration issues with the CNC machines. A real, practical concern. Jessica just blinked, smiled wider, and said she looked forward to diving into the details and empowering her people to bring solutions to the table. Translation: I have no idea what you're talking about. Ethan looked at me, bewildered. I just shrugged. She was the boss now. The org chart said so. Her first week was mostly spent redecorating her office, replacing Arthur's technical reference books with management philosophy bestsellers about disruption and thinking outside the box. My one-on-one was that Thursday. I expected a discussion about department priorities, ongoing projects, the stuff that actually matters. Instead, she spent 20 minutes outlining her servant leadership philosophy, drawing circles and arrows on her whiteboard, filled with words like alignment. It felt completely disconnected from reality. Then she asked me to describe my role in one sentence. I keep this facility running when things go wrong, I said. She jotted something down, didn't ask for details, didn't ask what kind of things, or how often, or what I'd learned from 17 years of problem solving. Just nodded and appreciated my dedication. I walked out of that meeting knowing exactly what kind of boss she was, one who mistook confidence for competence and thought managing people was the same as understanding what they do. Week 2, things really started to streamline. Jessica needed to assert authority. She changed our weekly engineering review from Tuesday morning to Friday afternoon without asking anyone, meaning half the team couldn't attend because they were on the production floor. When I politely explained the conflict, suggesting alternatives, she just said the new time worked better for her calendar. Her calendar. Then she reorganized the shared drive. 18 years of critical documentation, project files, technical specifications, all moved into a new folder structure that made sense only to someone who'd never actually needed to find anything in a hurry. It took me 3 agonizing hours to locate the tolerance specs for a major contract because she'd filed them under historical projects instead of active clients. I brought it up, gently suggesting we discuss major changes beforehand. Her practiced smile appeared again. Sometimes change is uncomfortable, she said, and we need to trust the process. Trust the process. Like finding critical documentation was some kind of personal growth exercise, not a job requirement. The next incident was a Wednesday. A CNC machine threw an error code no one recognized. Standard procedure, call me. I'd seen every error that machine could produce. But Jessica intercepted the call. She wanted to handle it herself, learn operations from the ground up. 3 hours later, the machine was still down, production was backing up. The shift supervisor finally called me directly. I found Jessica standing in front of the machine, flipping through the operator's manual like it was a recipe book. It was a thermal sensor misread, a common issue with rapid humidity changes. Takes 4 minutes to recalibrate if you know how. I fixed it. Didn't say a word, just fixed it and walked away. That afternoon, an email arrived from her. She appreciated my assistance, but reminded me that all technical issues should be routed through her office first. Chain of command, she wrote. I forwarded that email to my personal account. I started building a file. Week 3, she went after the coffee machine. This is crucial context. Our engineering department had a proper, commercial-grade espresso machine in the break room. Arthur had bought it with departmental funds 6 years ago, figuring if his people were working 60-hour weeks, they deserved decent coffee. It worked. Morale stayed high, people bonded over espresso, shared ideas, the kind of informal connections that make a team truly function. Jessica decided it was an unnecessary luxury. Said it created inequality, because other departments didn't have one. She announced it was being removed, replaced with a standard Keurig like everyone else. Nobody said anything in the meeting, but afterward, the break room felt like a funeral. Ethan summed it up best, this is how it starts. Death by 1,000 cuts. The espresso machine was gone by Monday. The Keurig arrived Tuesday. It made coffee that tasted like sadness and disappointment. Later that afternoon, Gary Thompson, a 30-year maintenance veteran, pulled me aside. He'd moved the espresso machine to a storage closet in Building B. I'll keep it maintained, he said, until things change. I told him it was probably unnecessary. He just smiled. I've seen a lot of bosses come and go. The good ones stay, the bad ones don't. Either way, the coffee machine will be there when things settle down. Week 4. This is when Jessica made her big move. Thursday morning, I was deep in a stress analysis for a landing gear component when she stopped by. That practiced smile already in place, the one that meant she was about to ask for something and expected total compliance. Hey, she chirped, I'm having my first leadership team meeting this afternoon. Directors from sales, operations, finance. Really important for a good impression. Big opportunity to set the tone for my tenure here. I need someone to handle the coffee and refreshments. I looked up from my screen, slowly processing her words. I'm in the middle of a structural analysis for the Morrison contract. Due tomorrow. She tilted her head, that dismissive gesture that said my concerns were noted but utterly irrelevant. I'm sure it can wait a few hours. This is important. You want me to get coffee and set up the conference room? Make sure everything looks professional. Maybe pick up some pastries from that bakery downtown. She said, like she was explaining something to a child, I'm a senior engineer and I'm your department head. We all pitch in around here. That's what teamwork looks like. I sat there for a moment. 17 years at this company. $2.3 million in documented savings last year. 3 patents with my name on them. I'd trained half the current engineering staff. I'd saved contracts worth tens of millions. And this woman wanted me to be her caterer. But here's the thing about working in a union shop, we have rules. Specific rules that management tends to forget about until someone reminds them. Rules that exist precisely because people like Jessica have existed throughout history, treating skilled workers like servants. Sure, I smiled. I'd be happy to help. Her expression flickered, surprise, maybe. She'd expected resistance, expected me to push back so she could assert dominance. No resistance meant she'd won. Or so she thought. Great. Meetings at 2. Make sure everything's ready by 1:30. Got it? She walked away, looking satisfied. I waited until she was back in her office, then pulled up the union contract on my computer. Article 7, Section 4, Subsection B. I'd read that document cover to cover when I first got hired. Read it again every time contract negotiations came up. Most people skimmed the boring parts. I memorized them. The relevant section covered job classifications and duty assignments. Specifically, it addressed situations where employees were asked to perform duties outside their normal job classification. The language was crystal clear: any employee assigned to perform courier, delivery, or service duties outside their primary job classification shall be compensated at twice the standard hourly rate for all time spent on such duties, including travel time. This provision existed because management used to ask skilled workers to run errands during labor shortages in the 70s. The union negotiated it to make it expensive for companies to misuse technical staff. Nobody had invoked it in years, but it was still there, still enforceable, still legally binding. I printed the relevant page, highlighted the subsection. Then I started planning. If Jessica wanted coffee, she was going to get coffee, just not the way she expected. First, I called Mike in the motor pool. Mike had been running fleet operations for over 30 years, knew every loophole in the vehicle requisition system. Knew how to make official business look official. Need a vehicle for a department errand, I told him. Official business. Mike didn't ask questions. That's what I liked about him. What kind of errand, he grumbled. Coffee run. Boss's orders. He laughed. The new one, huh? Heard she's a piece of work. She has high standards, I said dryly. Mike signed out a company truck to my name. A white Ford F-150 with the Cascade logo on the door. Official vehicle. Official business. All documented in the fleet management system with timestamps and authorization codes. Next, research. Jessica wanted coffee for her important meeting. She hadn't specified where to get it. She hadn't specified a budget. She hadn't specified a timeline beyond ready by 1:30. Those were her mistakes. See, there's a specialty coffee roaster about 2 hours east of Cleveland called Blackwood Brothers. They roast their own beans on site, sourced directly from small farms in Colombia and Ethiopia and Guatemala. Their pour-over is considered some of the best in the Midwest. I'd been there once for a friend's wedding reception. Knew they did corporate orders with full catering service. I called ahead, explained I needed premium coffee service for an executive meeting. 8 people, afternoon timing, company account. The woman on the phone was incredibly helpful. They could prepare a selection of single-origin pour-overs, provide proper ceramic cups and equipment, and include artisan pastries from their partner bakery. Total cost for the full premium package, $480. Perfect. I gave them the company credit card number, the one Jessica had issued to me the previous week for departmental supplies. She'd handed it over casually, saying I could use it for anything work-related. Her words, not mine. Then I logged my departure time in the company system, 9:47 a.m. Noted the purpose as procurement of refreshments per department head request. Everything documented, everything official, everything traceable. The drive east was pleasant. Late spring in Ohio, green fields, blue sky, minimal traffic on the interstate. I kept the radio on an oldies station and thought about all the ways this could play out. Best case scenario, Jessica learns that treating skilled employees like servants has consequences. She gets embarrassed in front of her director colleagues. Corporate gets involved. Maybe she thinks twice before pulling something like this again. Worst case, she tries to discipline me. I file a grievance with the union, and we spend the next 6 months in arbitration while the whole company watches her explain why she sent her senior engineer to fetch coffee. Either way, I wasn't losing. Blackwood Brothers was everything I remembered. Small building with exposed brick, the smell of fresh roasted beans hitting you the moment you walked in. They had a display case full of pastries that looked like art, croissants, danishes, and something called a kuhneman that I'd never heard of but looked incredible. The owner, a guy named Samuel Blackwood, came out personally to help with the order. Third-generation roaster. Knew everything about coffee the way I knew everything about stress tolerances. "You're from Cascade?" he asked, packing the thermal carafes. "We've done corporate events before, but usually it's office managers or executive assistants calling, not engineers." "Special situation," I replied. He nodded like he understood. "Some bosses forget who keeps the lights on." "Something like that," I agreed. He showed me the selection. 3 single-origin options with detailed tasting notes, Ethiopian Yirgacheffe with floral undertones, Colombian Huila with chocolate notes, Guatemalan Antigua with a citrus finish. Each carafe held enough for 8 servings, professionally presented with the Blackwood Brothers logo. The pastries were equally impressive, butter croissants, fruit danishes, chocolate almond biscotti, all made that morning, arranged on wooden serving boards with branded napkins. "This is a lot of effort for a coffee run," James commented. "First impressions matter," I quoted. He gave me a knowing look. "Well, I hope she appreciates it." "I'm sure she will," I said. The drive back took longer. Construction on I-90 added an extra 40 minutes. An accident near exit 187 added another 20. I didn't rush. Kept the thermal carafe secure in the passenger seat. Stopped once for gas and documented the receipt. Took my time at the rest stop. Bought a sandwich. Ate it slowly while watching trucks pass on the highway. I pulled into the Cascade parking lot at 3:23 p.m. Jessica's meeting had started at 2. I'd been gone for 5 hours and 36 minutes. The truck barely stopped before my phone started buzzing. 3 missed calls from Jessica. 2 from HR. 1 from David Clark, the operations director. Several text messages ranging from, "Where are you?" to, "This is unacceptable," to, "Call me immediately." I gathered the coffee supplies and walked into the building like nothing was wrong. Badged in, nodded at security, took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The conference room was visible through the glass walls as I approached. 8 people sitting around the table, Jessica at the head, face red, gesturing at something on her laptop screen. The directors looked uncomfortable, the kind of uncomfortable that comes from watching someone melt down in real time. I could see empty water glasses on the table, the standard company coffee pot sitting unused in the corner. They'd been waiting for hours. I knocked on the glass door, holding up a Blackwood Brothers carafe like a trophy. Jessica's head snapped toward me. For a second, I thought she might actually throw something. Her face went from red to purple. The directors all turned to stare. "Where have you been?" she hissed. "Getting coffee. Like you asked." I opened the door and started setting up the service station in the corner. Ceramic cups arranged neatly. Pastries on the wooden serving board. 3 different single-origin options with tasting notes printed on small cards. Professional presentation. Exactly what she had asked for. The directors stared. David Clark looked like he was trying not to laugh. Sarah Jenkins from finance had her hand over her mouth. Jessica stood up so fast her chair rolled backward and hit the wall. That meeting request was for 1:30. It is almost 3:30. I had to start this meeting with nothing. Do you understand how embarrassing that was? Do you understand how this made me look? I'm sorry for the inconvenience, I said calmly. I was fulfilling your request to obtain coffee and refreshments. The nearest facility that met professional standards for an executive meeting was located approximately 2 hours east of here. I prioritized quality, as you requested. Her eyes narrowed. Quality? You could have gone to the Starbucks 5 minutes away. You said you wanted to make a good impression. You said first impressions matter. I assumed that meant you wanted the best available option, not the most convenient one. Sarah from finance spoke up from her seat. Actually, these pastries are excellent. Where did you say this place was? Blackwood Brothers. About 2 hours east. They source directly from small farms. Roast everything on site. Jessica cut in. This is not relevant to the discussion. David Clark leaned back in his chair. I don't know, Jessica. Seems pretty relevant to me. You asked him to get coffee. He got coffee. Exceptional coffee, from the looks of it. This is insubordination. You deliberately sabotaged my meeting. I set down the last plate, arranged the napkins, made sure everything was perfectly positioned. Then I reached into my back pocket and pulled out the printed union contract page. Actually, I followed your instructions exactly. However, I do want to make you aware of Article 7, Section 4, Subsection B of our collective bargaining agreement. I extended the paper toward her. It states that any employee assigned courier or service duties outside their primary job classification is entitled to compensation at twice the standard hourly rate, including travel time. She looked at it like I'd handed her a live snake. Didn't take it, just stared. My standard hourly rate is $64. I was performing courier duties for 5 hours and 36 minutes. That's $358 at base rate, or $716 at the contractual double-time rate. Additionally, I incurred $480 in refreshment costs, which I charged to the departmental account as authorized by you. The room was silent. David Clark had stopped pretending not to laugh and was openly grinning. Sarah Jenkins was taking notes. You charged $700 for coffee? Jessica's voice had gone shrill, higher than professional, the kind of voice that makes people look away out of second-hand embarrassment. I obtained premium catering services for an executive meeting as instructed. I followed proper procurement procedures and documented all expenses. I also ensured that my compensation for performing non-engineering duties was handled according to our legally binding union contract. I paused. Let the silence build. Would you like me to invoice HR directly, or should I submit through the normal timesheet process? Jessica looked at the other directors. They looked away. Nobody wanted to be associated with this. This is ridiculous. You're not getting double time for a coffee run. That's fine. We can address it through the grievance process. I'm sure the union steward would be interested in reviewing a case where management explicitly assigned courier duties to a classified engineer and then refused contractual compensation. David Clark spoke up. Jessica, can we take a 5-minute break? I think we should let this get sorted out privately. She nodded stiffly. The directors filed out. A few of them grabbed pastries on the way. One commented quietly that the croissants looked amazing. Another poured himself a cup of the Ethiopian and raised his eyebrows appreciatively. Sarah stopped to examine the coffee selection. Blackwood Brothers. Nice choice. These guys are excellent. I've been to their tasting room. Thanks, I said. Figured if I was making the trip, might as well do it right. Jessica and I were alone now. She stood behind her chair, gripping the back like she needed something to hold on to. You think you're clever? I think I followed instructions. You deliberately made me look foolish in front of my peers. You asked a senior engineer to fetch coffee. The foolishness was built into the request. I just provided documentation. Her jaw tightened. This isn't over. The grievance goes through regardless. That's $716 you owe me. I walked out before she could respond. Mark Evans, the union steward, found me at my desk 20 minutes later. He'd been with Cascade almost as long as I had, knew the contract as well as anyone. Heard you had an interesting afternoon, he chuckled. News travels fast. He sat on the corner of my desk. Mike called me. Said you requisitioned a truck for a coffee run and came back 4 hours later with gourmet espresso. Said it was the best use of company resources he'd seen in years. 5 hours and 36 minutes, I corrected. Mark grinned. Article 7, Section 4, Subsection B. You know your contract. That provision hasn't been invoked since 1989. Guy named Leo Rodriguez got sent to pick up dry cleaning for his supervisor. Billed 8 hours of double time because he drove to a cleaner in Akron instead of using the one across the street. Management never assigned personal errands to union members again. Legend. Mark handed me a form. File this. I'll make sure it gets processed correctly. Also, between us, about 6 other people in the department have approached me about similar incidents. Jessica's been using engineers as personal assistants since she got here, having people pick up her lunch, run documents to other buildings. One guy got sent to pick up her dry cleaning 3 times in 2 weeks. You're just the first one to fight back. I filled out the form, signed it, dated it, handed it back. She's going to escalate this, probably. He shrugged. Corporate doesn't like union grievances. Bad for metrics, bad for executive reviews. Last department head who racked up multiple grievances got quietly transferred to a facility in Arizona in July without air conditioning. The next few weeks were a lesson in Cold War dynamics. Jessica didn't speak to me directly. Everything came through email, meticulously worded and CC'd to Lauren Miller in HR. She requested status updates on projects that didn't need updates, asked for documentation on procedures I'd been performing successfully for years, scheduled performance check-ins, with vague agendas and ominous subject lines. The first check-in was the Monday after the coffee incident. She had a list of concerns: my attitude, my communication style, my resistance to change. She read them off like she was presenting evidence at a trial. I sat there and let her finish. Then I asked if she had any concerns about my actual work product, the quality of my engineering, the accuracy of my analyses, the effectiveness of my solutions. She paused, said she was focused on behavioral issues at this time. I told her I'd take her feedback under advisement, asked if there was anything else. She said no. I left. That afternoon, I sent her an email summarizing our conversation, CC'd HR, noted that no performance concerns related to engineering quality had been raised, and asked her to confirm the summary was accurate. She never responded, but she also never brought up that meeting again. I responded to everything she sent me on time, in writing, with excessive detail. She wanted a status update on the Morrison contract. A 14-page report with appendices covering stress analysis methodology, tolerance specifications, supplier communications, and a timeline showing I was ahead of schedule. She wanted documentation on the calibration process for Building C. A complete procedural manual, plus photographs, plus a comparison analysis with industry standards showing our process exceeded baseline requirements by 18%. Every email ended the same way: please let me know if you need any additional information. I'm happy to provide clarification. Ethan started calling it the bureaucratic Aikido approach. Make compliance into a weapon. Meanwhile, Jessica was struggling with the actual job. First disaster, she approved a vendor change for precision fasteners without consulting anyone. Saved 12% on unit costs. Also resulted in 4 rejected batches because the new fasteners didn't meet aerospace certification requirements. Cost us $90,000 in rework and delayed delivery penalties. Second disaster, she restructured the project management workflow to improve efficiency. Added 3 new approval layers, increased average project timelines by 11%. Third disaster, she implemented a new performance metric system based on something from a management seminar. Engineers started getting evaluated on criteria that had nothing to do with engineering quality. 2 junior engineers started updating their resumes. One of them, a talented kid named Daniel, who'd been with us 3 years, actually quit. Took a job with a competitor. We lost 2 years of training investment because Jessica wanted to measure synergy. Fourth disaster, she scheduled a critical client presentation without checking the engineering team's availability. I was in the middle of a compliance audit. Ethan was handling a machine failure in Building C. The presentation happened with no technical staff present. The client asked questions nobody could answer. They walked away with serious concerns about our capabilities. And through all of it, I just kept doing my job, quietly, effectively, documenting everything. The grievance hearing happened 6 weeks after the coffee incident. Standard process, me, Mark, Jessica, Lauren Miller from HR, and a neutral arbitrator from the Union Management Committee. We met in Conference Room B at 9 a.m., the same room where Jessica had announced all her changes. Felt appropriate. The arbitrator was a guy named Robert Sullivan, a retired labor lawyer who'd done hundreds of these hearings, had a reputation for being fair but thorough. Jessica's argument was predictable. I had deliberately misinterpreted her request. A reasonable person would have understood she meant local coffee, not a 4-hour road trip. My actions constituted insubordination and malicious compliance. She brought documentation, emails showing I'd been a difficult employee, performance concerns she'd noted over the previous weeks, a written statement arguing that my behavior was part of a pattern of resistance to her leadership. She even had a timeline showing how long it should have taken to get coffee from nearby vendors. Robert reviewed everything carefully, took notes, asked clarifying questions about the emails. My counterargument was simpler. She assigned a classified engineer to perform courier duties. The contract specifies compensation rates for such assignments. The distance traveled was a direct result of her failure to provide specific parameters. I followed her instructions exactly as given. I brought documentation, too, the union contract with the relevant section highlighted, the fleet requisition form showing official authorization, the credit card receipt showing proper procurement procedures, the time log showing my departure and return times, plus testimonials from 3 coworkers about similar errand requests they'd received. Mark presented the union's position, cited precedent from the 1989 Leo Rodriguez case, quoted the exact contract language, pointed out that the provision existed specifically to prevent this kind of situation. Robert reviewed everything, asked clarifying questions. Then he turned to Jessica. Ms. Maxwell, did you provide Mr. with specific instructions regarding where to obtain the coffee? I said to get coffee and pastries, but no specific vendor, no location, no budget constraints. I expected him to use common sense. The arbitrator nodded, made a note, turned to me. Mr. Graham, did you have any reason to believe Mrs. Maxwell intended for you to spend 5 hours on this errand? She said it was an important meeting with directors. She emphasized making a good impression. She said, first impressions matter. I obtained what I judged to be the highest quality option available given those parameters. Another note. The arbitrator looked at both of us. The contract language is clear. Courier duties performed by classified personnel are compensable at double time rates. The assignment was made without parameters. The employee followed the assignment as given. The grievance is sustained. The award is $716, to be processed through standard payroll within 2 pay periods. Jessica's face went white. Lauren from HR was already making notes. I would also recommend that department management establish clear protocols for any future non-standard duty assignments to avoid similar disputes. Meeting adjourned. Mark shook my hand outside the conference room. First sustained Article 7 grievance in 34 years. You're officially a legend. The fallout came faster than expected. David Clark, the operations director who'd been in that conference room during the coffee incident, mentioned the situation during an executive meeting the following week. He described what he'd seen, the shouting, the contract dispute, the $700 coffee service, the way the directors had quietly enjoyed the excellent pastries while watching their colleague implode. Corporate launched a quiet review of Jessica's department management. They found the fastener disaster, the project delays, the morale issues, the grievance, 6 complaints from other engineers about being used as personal assistants. Daniel's resignation letter, explicitly citing toxic management. 2 months after the arbitration, Jessica announced she was leaving Cascade to pursue other opportunities. Standard corporate language, but everyone knew what it meant. She'd been given the choice to resign gracefully or be managed out messily. Her last day was a Friday. She packed her office without saying goodbye to anyone. I watched her carry a box to her car around 4:30. She didn't look back. The following Monday felt different, lighter. People actually smiled in the hallways. Someone brought donuts to the morning meeting. Ethan made a joke about servant leadership and nobody flinched. The interim department head was Joyce Riley. 11 years with Cascade, worked her way up from quality control. She actually knew what a tolerance specification was. Actually understood why certain things mattered. First thing she did was call a department meeting, not to talk about synergy or optimization, but just to ask what was broken and what we needed to fix it. People actually spoke up, the meeting schedule, the shared drive organization, the performance metrics, the approval layers. 2 hours later, we had a priority list and a plan. Second thing she did was have Gary bring the espresso machine back from the storage closet in Building B. "Welcome back," she said when we rolled it into place. Gary made the first cup, said it still worked perfectly, said he'd been maintaining it every week, just in case. Third thing Joyce did was reach out to Daniel, the junior engineer who'd quit. Asked if he'd consider coming back. Told him things had changed. He said he'd think about it. 3 months later, Joyce called me into her office. Corporate wants to make this permanent. Department head position. They're also adding a deputy role for technical oversight. I recommended you. Unanimous board approval. 15% raise. Reserved parking spot. I accept. She slid a paper across the desk. One condition. The coffee runs go through proper procurement channels. No more 4-hour road trips. Deal. Update, 6 months later. The story got even better. Jessica's fastener disaster. That $90,000 figure was conservative. One of our aerospace clients, a major defense contractor I can't name, launched a full supply chain audit after the incident. Standard procedure when a quality issue gets flagged. Usually, it's a formality. This time, it wasn't. The audit revealed that Jessica had approved 3 other vendor changes during her brief tenure, all without proper engineering review, all to save money on unit costs. 2 of them created potential compliance issues with FAA certification standards. Nothing had failed yet, nothing had caused an accident, but the potential was there. And in aerospace, potential is enough. The defense contractor paused their contract pending a full remediation review. That contract was worth $4.2 million annually. The remediation process took 3 months and cost another $600,000 in consultant fees, additional testing, and expedited recertification. Total damage from Jessica's cost-cutting initiatives, approximately $1.8 million. Ethan found her on LinkedIn last month. She's at a consulting firm in Indianapolis now. Title, Strategic Operations Advisor. She posted an article about servant leadership and empowering teams through trust. Ethan screenshotted it and sent it to the group chat. 3 laughing emojis. The consulting firm called Cascade for a reference about 8 months after she started there. HR forwarded the call to David Clark. His response apparently included phrases like significant compliance concerns and would not recommend for roles requiring technical judgment. Jessica lasted another 4 months at the consulting firm. Her LinkedIn now says she's a freelance strategic advisor. Meanwhile, Joyce got promoted to VP of Operations. She asked me to take over as full department head. I said yes. Another raise, corner office. First thing I did was order a second espresso machine for the quality control team. They'd been jealous of ours for years. Second thing I did was reinstate the Tuesday morning engineering review. Full attendance, actual technical discussions. No buzzwords allowed. Third thing I did was call Blackwood Brothers and set up a monthly delivery. Premium beans, company expense. Joyce approved it without hesitation. Said it was a morale investment. Mike from the motor pool stopped by last week. Said he was retiring at the end of the year, 32 years running fleet operations. Asked if I remembered the coffee. How could I forget? I said. He grinned. Best requisition I ever approved. Still tell that story at family dinners. Joyce asked me to draft new guidelines for non-standard duty assignments. Simple policy: if a task falls outside an employee's job classification, it requires written authorization with specific parameters, budget limitations, and expected completion time. No ambiguity, no games. She approved it the same day. Put it in the employee handbook. Final update, 1 year later. Got a call from Samuel Blackwood last Tuesday, owner of Blackwood Brothers, the coffee roaster. Said he'd been telling the story of the Cascade coffee run for months. His customers loved it. Turns out one of those customers was a regional business reporter for a Cleveland newspaper. She tracked me down through the company, asked if I'd do an interview about workplace dynamics and union contracts. The article ran last Sunday, the $716 coffee run, how one engineer used a union contract to push back against a bad boss. They interviewed me, Mark Evans, and Samuel Blackwood. Even got a quote from David Clark about what he witnessed in that conference room. The reporter did her research, found a Leo Rodriguez precedent from 1989, talked to labor lawyers about the enforceability of union contracts, made it into a bigger story about workplace dignity and knowing your rights. The article got picked up by a few national outlets. Business Insider ran a summary. A labor rights blog did a follow-up piece. I started getting emails from engineers at other companies asking for advice on their own situations. Sent them all copies of their union contracts with the relevant sections highlighted. Told them to document everything. Ethan framed a copy of the article and hung it in the break room. Right next to the espresso machine, someone added a sticky note underneath that said, "First impressions matter." Blackwood Brothers sent us a care package last week, 3 pounds of their best beans, a handwritten note from James, and a coffee mug that says, "First impressions matter." Samuel wrote that our story had brought them more business than any advertising campaign ever had. Said they were naming a blend after the incident. Called it, the Grievance Roast. I put the mug on my desk. Use it every morning. What do you think about standing up for yourself in the workplace, especially when you know your rights? Have you ever had a boss like Jessica? Share your stories and thoughts in the comments below. I'm genuinely curious to hear what you've all experienced.